Hello and welcome to another episode of WagmiTV. This is our fourth episode, and you already know I'm joined by the absolute fellas, NFT Garcia, the Doctor, Doc Mata, and the one and only All-American, Evan Smith. How we doing, boys?
You're doing great.
Great.
Fantastic.
Another week in the books, huh?
Another one in the books. So this one, we couldn't wait another week to put another episode out. So we're back in the same week, but we'll be back again. Tune in, same time every week. You know how it goes. Today we got some exciting NFTs to talk about. I'll throw it over to Evan to just get going on it. We're going to be talking some updates on Wulfz. What do we got?
Hell yeah, let's get into it. Garcia, you want to share the Discord? So we've got a ton of exciting news around Wulfz. I know a few of our viewers also hold Wulfz, and we just want to give a quick shout out because we love our Wulfz team. But yeah, they've had a lot of updates in the last couple of weeks that we're excited to share. So the first being the reveal of Pups. So Pups has been a child NFT of the Wulfz collection. Essentially, you can take one wolf and 600 AWU tokens and burn the tokens to create a Pup NFT. For the last, I think, couple months, they've just been shown as bouncing eggs or moving eggs. The actual artwork that deals with the Pups hasn't been revealed yet. So in the last couple of weeks, they've finally revealed a small set, or I guess a couple sets now, of the Pups, and they've got fully animated features. They've got fun little tokens on their heads.
So these are the Pups right there in that
right,
photo?
they're the Pups.
So some of these, like the top left is one.
Yep.
And so, the top left is one. The middle picture there is you can take your wolf or your pup into the World Wide Web game and use it as your own avatar, which is a pretty exciting integration. I think that's probably the first time I've personally been able to see an NFT used as an avatar. And then in the far right, top right, that's the 3D voxel avatar that they're hoping to launch here soon. But Pups was really that first stepping stone to get into the voxel avatar on the top right. So definitely some exciting new releases within the Wulfz NFT collection. And in the bottom right there, you can see that Pups also gains you 5 AWU a day once you stake it. So I think we've run through some of the staking mechanics that they have within the collection in previous episodes, but yeah, just wanted to give a little update to some of the listeners.
And so just as somebody who's not super familiar, can you remind me again? So the Pups are still 1/10 the rewards of the Wulfz, correct? That was always the case. Is that right?
One half of it. So one wolf makes 10 AWU. That middle one there is the alpha wolf, which
okay, got it.
Yeah, that's probably the confusion there. But
oh, my bad. Okay, so the top one right here is the wolf, and then the pup makes half the rewards.
Yeah. And so
Gotcha. Okay.
When you just look at that mechanic, you kind of expect Pups to be priced at about, half the price of a wolf.
Right.
Originally, the roadmap that they had was that there was going to be 5,555 wolves, but closer to 10,000 pups. So that was going to be something that, created a large amount of supply just because, 10,000 pups plus 5 AWU a day per pup. That's 50,000 AWU tokens that are going to be added to the supply just daily.
Right.
And I think Slide and some of the other founders, I don't know their full reasoning behind it, but you could see how the supply could easily get out of control. And so, I think it's the 2 posts down. They
Yeah,
just
the daycare.
announced the last couple days that after April 1st, there's going to be you're not going to be able to burn a Woo to mint pup NFTs. So that's kind of a big switch in the roadmap. And we saw today that I think the Woo token jumped up, 60% or something like that from, what was it, 20 cents to 35 or 30 cents. So,
Got it. So the market is taking that as like a very bullish update.
Yeah, and I think it's shrinking the expected supply. It's pretty widely shrinking the expected supply for Woo, just because so many were going to be created daily by the pups that those mechanics aren't there anymore, or they won't be there after April 1st. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. That kind of came out of nowhere. So I'll be interested to see. The main utility for the Woo token was to create a pup, or also use it in the whitelist store. So if you take away one main utility of a token, you hope that they're going to be able to add another utility or some more functionality with it. So I expect this is kind of just the beginning of the news. There hopefully will be other utility announcements coming later down the road. And then that takes us to the third and final one, which is that the Wulfz collection has bought a 3x3 plot in the Sandbox, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, I don't think they released a ton of information about this, but what they're looking to do is basically create a hub where, all Wulfz holders can go and hang out. So I think we've probably seen a lot of NFT collections look to do this. I know within the Sandbox, Bored Ape Yacht Club has basically a hub for their users that they're expecting to use. So I think pretty common, but definitely exciting news from the founders. So that was our Wulfz update, but that takes us into the Sandbox. And, hopefully going to be the first of a few weeks in a row covering different metaverse collections. And I know there's other main ones. We've got Decentraland, we've got NFT Worlds, which Sia is an expert at. I think we covered TCG last week, but this is kind of just probably the original. I wouldn't say the original, but the one with the most celebrity partnerships and marketing around it. So you've probably heard of it the most. And so, to start, the Sandbox was originally this game that started in 2013 that was on the App Store, the iPhone App Store, that actually won App of the Year back in 2013. And it was just
I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all.
So I think it got 50,000 downloads within its first month or something like that. Like, it was pretty popular, but I think it was very different from the Sandbox that we have here. So in 2018, Animoca Brands, I think it's Animoca brand, acquired a portion of the Sandbox. And I believe what they acquired was the actual map and some of the utility within the map. So they bought it. And then since 2018, they've had a couple investments. They had a small $2 million investment or funding round in Q3 of 2019. But then in November of 2021, SoftBank led a $93 million round of funding for the Sandbox. So pretty significant. I think probably most people have heard of SoftBank. I'm not mistaken. It's the largest VC fund in the world. So I'll defer to Soham on that one. But I know it is.
I don't really know based on AUM, but yeah, obviously SoftBank is fucking massive.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, they're well funded. The other kind of thing that the Sandbox is known for is their partnerships. you know, they have some crazy corporate partnerships, whether it's with Atari, The Walking Dead. I know Snoop Dogg has bought a huge plot and hosted a like a festival at his place last year. So a ton of different partnerships. I was hoping that you could see right here. So Dead Mouse, some of the other more entertainment focused brands. But yeah, so you know, the sandbox is actually, from what I thought, was pretty complex. So essentially you have Sand, which is their token that you use to buy land or other stuff within the platform. The other stuff is they call them assets, which are essentially different 3D objects that you can mint on the Ethereum blockchain and then sell in their marketplace. And so essentially what they have is like an app store for different NFTs that you can buy in Sand and add to your, you know, collection or wherever you want to put it. And so basically, if people are unfamiliar with the word, a voxel is the same thing as a pixel, but in 3 dimensions. So these are voxel based art, where essentially you're making a 3-dimensional grid within their platform and then just minting the graphic on the Ethereum blockchain. So I don't think they have the actual tool on the website, but there's some fun YouTube videos that you can go look up, and it's just artists creating voxel art. And so I think that was something that we mentioned in last week or the week before, is that, you know, in Web 2.0, the influencer kind of came about. But what you could see with Web 3 is that, you know, artists are able to kind of create self-sustaining businesses just off of these different assets that they're able to sell, not only on OpenSea as their own NFT collections, but within these marketplaces that these different metaverse apps have. So yeah, so
when you're thinking about just a quick question.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about how to invest in Sandbox, right? There's like a few different avenues, right? You can buy the token.
Right.
You can buy land, or I guess you can even buy these voxels, or, you know, these items, I guess, that are used within the game. I don't know if they're collectibles or if like you can actually do stuff like, will you actually be able to play pool with this pool table at some point? So I'm just curious how you go about thinking about the optimal strategy of investing within a, you know, a platform or, you know, a metaverse platform like this. Like, is the
other than
optimal
buying
strategy
sand,
like,
obviously.
yeah, is it like like maybe you take some of your portfolio and put it in sand and then have like a plot of land, and then also you know, maybe some of these voxels that are like good collectibles, or like would you go like all sand? Would you go like all land? Obviously it's a, you know, a plot of land in the sandbox is not cheap. It's probably going for, you know, 2, 3 Ethereum when we looked at it. But how do you think about kind of your strategy when it comes to potentially investing in one of these things?
Yeah, so I think where we could start would be the land asset that they have, in looking at, you know, proximity, and I guess what the map looks like. The second would be sand and the pretty aggressive vesting schedule that they have, which a lot of people see as almost a red flag with Sandbox, one of the things you kind of should look out for. And then we'll go into, you know, their marketplace that they have here. So I guess to start, this is the Sandbox map. And so let's see, they've got large plots from Atari, like we mentioned, like these different partnerships that they have. And so, you know, it's tough to figure out how movement within this map will happen. They haven't really, you know, the alpha is out. You can see some gameplay, but it's tough to figure out if teleportation is going to be very easy within this platform, because if it's something where you have to run from one side of the map to the other side of the map just to be able to, enter into Atari's place or Ubisoft or something like that, then that could cause, real estate to be even more important, because you would want to be very closely tied to, the major hubs. And so you'll look in this center portion here, and this is a pretty highly densified area along with the bottom right portion, where you see a lot of what I would think businesses already, like Snoop Dogg right down here. Let's see if we can pull this out right here. And so the question is am I going to be able to walk down a street essentially and be able to see my house on the left and Snoop Dogg on the right, or a mall on the right, or some type of other experience? Or is it something where you're going to essentially have to teleport between each space? There's no common area. And because of that, that almost like the real estate location doesn't matter as much, because proximity is, kind of relative. If you can teleport it everywhere, why does it really matter where you're at?
Right. I think that's a really interesting point. I think in the, in the metaverse play to earn episode that we did, I brought up the point of how, like, even within the metaverse, it's like a similar concept where, like, a plot of land in Manhattan versus some other like area that's not as densely populated. Like, there's a reason why a plot of land in Manhattan is so expensive. But that also inherently is because as humans, we can't just like end up somewhere like completely different immediately. Right. That's a function of that as well. And I feel like kind of the whole point of the metaverse is to like do shit that like you can't do in real life. Right. Like, I should be able to fly in the metaverse. If I'm not flying in the metaverse, then like, what the fuck? Fuck that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you think about the competitive like dynamics of this, right? Like, let's say Sandbox says no. You can't teleport or you can't fly from one place to another. Probably someone in the competition will make that a feature. In which case, like, for the plots of land within Sandbox, it's obviously better for the prices of the plots of land to make it not possible. But at the same time, they're probably also thinking one of their competitors will make that possible, in which case that'll put them at a competitive disadvantage.
Right. And so that brings up the other question of, or the other point that, if real estate doesn't really matter, then you're really banking on the platform and the type of APIs you can hit as a developer, and essentially the type of user experience that you can bring to the end user that's coming in there. And so, it almost gets away from the fact that, sure, it's a cool map and you can see how close you are to these other significant brands that are on this map, but you really have to dig into the development team and see, how, I'm sure they're doxed because of the amount of money that they're getting, but that roadmap and the type of, different features that they're going to be able to make use to these artists that we're talking about that are building these experiences. When you look at a Walking Dead, you could see this being essentially, a zombie Halloween experience where you're going in and in real time being chased by, whoever. So, I think I could probably do a little more digging to figure out their roadmap, but, that's something that, we'll have to watch going forward here, just to differentiate itself from other metaverses.
Yeah, from my understanding, it's going to be like a combination of both, I think. So like a lot of these plots are just going to be accessible to people who have access to the actual plot. So like if you have a ticket that day to Snoop Dogg's plot for his concert, like, you get entrance to his plot. But I think you can like walk by it, like if you're near it.
Yeah.
You just can't, like, you just wouldn't be able to like enter it, like similar to like how you're not going to climb over someone's fence and like walk into their yard or into their house when you're walking by their house, they're like similar to that. and the way I picture it is like, if you are like, let's say, invited, like you somehow verify an NFT that you're able to access the Walking Dead plot, for X like week or whatever it is. Like, I'm sure, I mean, I'm not sure, but I picture it being like a timed like ability to teleport there and like go and have that experience. But that kind of brings back the point of like, that kind of, this double-edged sword with like the fun of like experiencing the world and like walking around and stuff. Like, if you're just going to teleport everywhere, like what's the point of a world,
Yeah,
But more B2B on at that point, it wouldn't be like location, 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 as in like this exact plot of the sandbox. But it'd be more like, are you in Sandbox or are you in, something else? Right. I think that would be kind of, so it'd just take longer to get to that point that we're kind of discussing. But
Yeah.
the location would be like a larger piece rather than a small piece of Sandbox specifically. It'd be like, which metaverse are you in? Basically, is kind of how I'm interpreting that, which is
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, I wonder how that brings up a good point about it, because like I wonder how like people are hopping from like different chains now, from like ETH to AVAX to Polygon. Like, I wonder if people will just be like, oh yeah, like we're gonna do this in NFT worlds, and we're gonna go over to Sandbox and we have this happening, and then we're gonna go to like Decentraland and like whatever metaverses end up making it. Like, I wonder like how people will, like, it'd be interesting to see like if some metaverses are used for a specific type of experience, some are used for different, how that's going to play out.
yeah, and
Right.
that's a good note, Sia, because and
It's
we'll
almost like bridging. It's almost like bridging, like you do now between blockchains. You bridge between different metaverses, but like
Yeah.
theoretically, you have like, it'd be really cool to see if like there will be some like cross compatibility in terms of like what you own in different metaverses. Maybe they'll be transferable at some point.
Yeah.
Well, you would hope so if they were Ethereum based NFTs, that you could, take them into other metaverses. I think that's kind of a major selling point. But also to your points, and hopefully we'll cover this next week on looking into Decentraland. That's one of the key I guess points of their value proposition, is that they want to be able to hook into other metaverses to make it very easy to hop in and out. And this is actually, I believe, the Decentraland logo here, where they've purchased land, to be able to easily hook into the Sandbox.
Interesting.
That's really cool.
And so
You
are
can-
we saying then each metaverse would then have a different utility almost? Because like when I think of like cryptocurrencies and things like that, right? That we're kind of all aware of, those hopping between chains. It's like each time it does that, it's usually for a different reason or utility, because ETH can't do this as well, or etc. Right? This feels like they could all kind of do the same thing in a way. Does that make sense? Or am I like thinking of this wrong?
I mean, yes and no, right? I think they could do the same thing, but it's going to get down to how is Sandbox able to monetize their experience, the most, and because of that, they've got to create a competitive advantage against some of these other metaverses. And so I think that kind of gets back to the point of being able to just hop in between without having to walk across the street from Snoop Dogg's to another experience. It's one, what type of advertising, what type of monetization can happen when you look at choosing between walking down, a virtual street to teleporting. You figure there's probably going to be reasons why some platforms, have that mechanic, and then some don't.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a lot of, same but different between the platforms. Like, it's kind of like how like in, the US, like there's a bunch of cities and they're all a city and they all have, the same properties, but like they're totally different. Like spending a day in New York is completely different than spending a day in LA or a day in Seattle, So like, it's going to be about like who's hanging out there in the metaverse, who, like, what's the culture like what are the, like you said, experiences, events that are held there. And first and foremost, do people actually like congregate there, because if people aren't using it, then it's dead in the water anyway. But I envision it being a lot about you know, and I feel like we beat a dead horse with the word community, but it's going to be a lot about community in the long run.
Definitely. Yeah. And to just your analogy, you know, there's different incentives per city for you know, entrepreneurs and people that run businesses. And so you could see that happening on these platforms, because you look at this, and this is really a platform to create virtual businesses. You know, you're looking at an entire map that is filled with people that want to create new experiences for these end users. And so you could see where, sure, Atari would have, you know, maybe an arcade or something like that you could go into, but, you know, is there a virtual, are there virtual bars? Is there a business model where that makes sense for owners to be able to create that experience? And so back to your point, Zoe, it's just like all about, you know, do the investments make sense? I'm sure there's kind of infinite amount of investments if they're able to create the right platform that incentivizes these business owners.
Yeah, I think the idea of travel, whether it's inter-metaverse, which is like within, let's say, Sandbox or within Decentraland, within NFT worlds, like travel within the actual metaverse, and then always also intra metaverse transfer, where it's like, or transportation, where it's like transportation between the metaverses and how that's going to work. I think that idea of transportation when it comes to metaverse is like very interesting, because it's so different than like what we think about on like a, you know, everyday basis in the real world, right? The possibilities for transportation are completely like, it'll be up to the developers and the team driving the project forward to figure out how that's going to look. I can also see a situation where you can almost tie transportation to the token that you offer, right?
Yeah.
So like within Sandbox, let's say, right, teleportation could be possible, but it's not like it'll be free.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like that then is this flywheel effect where it increases the demand for the token itself. Maybe it'll be like that, or maybe it'll be like, oh, you have to have a certain voxel or something like that, and that enables you to teleport.
Yeah.
And then you can start to see kind of the intricacies that come into play, like, okay, maybe like this voxel only lets you transport like X amount of like distance versus another one will enable you to like go across the map entirely and things like that, right? So you can see, I'm sure they're thinking very creatively about how to basically incentivize the entire ecosystem to feed on itself. Kind of going back to our previous conversation on metaverse and P2E. It'll be really interesting to, like, I haven't personally thought a whole lot about transportation within the metaverse, but it seems like it'll be a key factor going forward in terms of like the success of these projects, I think.
And just determining how they continue to build them, right? I mean, I think that the way what Sia put into perspective, that really helped me. I think, like, think of them almost as like different cities, right? So in that same setting, like, you need to buy a flight to go over to a different metaverse, right? And you have to pay X amount of sand or whatever native token to do so, right? Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I really like that, and it's just something that they'll continuously build out in front of our eyes.
Yeah. So wait, so for Sandbox and
Decentraland,
I know yeah, but NFT Worlds is for sure will be like gaming focused. Will these also be like a game that you can play, like almost like a RPG type game, or not really? Is it just like a virtual land, that like virtual space that people can, hang out on and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there's like a distinction where there's like actual game to be played versus this is just like a area to go like chill and do like activities.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, it's just kind of a place to go congregate. And then within that, you're able to create different experiences on different plots of land. So I really think of each of those plots probably being a business, and you could easily hop business to business to play different role-playing games, but the entire Sandbox platform would kind of be just the main area that you load into.
Yeah, like the different
Got
plots
it.
can create like game experiences and make it like play to earn if they want to, or like, integrate it with different ways, or game develop on their own plot if they want to. Like similar to like if you wanted to, a certain plot of land owns like a escape room, place, and like you pay a certain amount to go in and play. Like same kind of idea. If you're walking by a plot of land in Sandbox, like, oh, it's 5 sand to, enter, and you can go play, paintball to win sand or whatever it is, and I think that's kind of more the model they're looking at.
Interesting. So then you almost can see in a situation where we talk about like what's going to be different in each of these kind of metaverses and like what's going to be the drawing factor. It seems just based on that, you could see a situation where they all, like not all, but like just these top few all succeed. But the main differentiator, like the top of mind in my view, comes down to price, right? Like you can have one, like when you think about like business strategy, right? You're always thinking about, okay, is this like, who is this product for, right? Like where's like the product market fit? Is my target consumer somebody who is extremely wealthy and like this is more like a luxury experience versus like, am I trying to undercut the competition on price, right? And go mainly based on like just volume, right? And so you can see a similar scenario where, these companies will have to figure out like what their strategy is. And like that I could see as just off the top of my head being like an immediate differentiating factor. Like let's say Decentraland wants to be like the luxury experience where everything there just costs a shit ton and like, it inherently draws a more like exclusive, like richer audience versus like, let's say Sandbox wants to be like the low cost player within the space. In that situation, they could both succeed, right?
Yeah, I think that aligns really well with kind of the illusion we were making to cities as well, right? I mean, it's going to cost way more to live in New York than it is to live in, I don't know, Detroit or something like that, right?
Exactly. And the trade-off is like, like obviously, New York costs a shit ton, but then obviously, the brunch you get is fire, and like there's a bunch of music that comes through there. There's all these perks that come with the luxury experience. So like maybe like Sandbox or Decentraland turns into that luxury experience where it's like, dude, like we got to go play this, XYZ game, or go do this because that's happening at Sandbox, like, because that's just where that's kind of stuff happens. Like we're totally hypothesizing at this point, but like that's something that could happen. I think it's not too far off.
Right. And I think it's pretty easy to get carried away with just the endless possibilities that can happen with the metaverse. And you kind of got to remember that, there's a full team behind this. There's roadmap, there's tokenomics. And so I guess kind of like diving into one of the red flags that people do say about Sandbox is how quick their token, I guess you would call, release or vesting schedule is. So when you look at where we are at the moment, we're essentially right in this area here, and so we just had a release of around 15% of the supply. And so when you look back to the chart within the past couple months, you see a significant dip. I think it's also could be tied to the slump we've seen in other coins around crypto, but Something that people have said is that, it's a pretty aggressive vesting and release schedule, where the founders have said on previous interviews that the entire supply is going to be community owned within 3 to 5 years. And so you ask, well, what's the roadmap? What does your guys' involvement look like, post 3 to 5 years? So that's something to watch out for. And I think, if it is a case where, the founders aren't looking to be involved post that, that's going to become a much larger story, and you can see some volatility in the land price. So yeah, so we kind of covered the land. We looked into the sand token and what that looks like. I think at the moment it's priced at around $3. And so it's got a decently large market cap. When we looked at, or when you look at Axie Infinity's market cap, Axie Infinity is right around 3 billion. So it's got a larger coin market cap than the largest P2E game at the moment, which, I think it's impressive. I think the Sandbox also has that type of brand where it can deliver on that. So I think that's also interesting. And when we look at the final portion of, I guess, where you can invest in the Sandbox, it's within that third-party marketplace that we talked about.
Right.
So a little bit of a deep dive here, because I don't know, I kind of found this interesting just because this is one of the first, I guess, third-party marketplaces outside of maybe NFT creators on OpenSea that I've seen. Or
That's
like
an expensive motel sign. Oh my god.
Actually, like what, 10 people at bottom?
$1,500, 75 minted. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it is fresh, but
I was about to say it looks pretty good.
So is the idea that you can be like a verified Sandbox artist and like make these, and that's kind of like your role, and like every time someone buys them or something, you get a commission? Like, is that a thing, or does Sandbox have like a team that's actually like making these?
No, I believe it's third party artists. And so essentially what you see within their white paper is, they've got a lot of allocation to company funds, to obviously the reserve treasury, and for paying their developers. But they also have a foundation portion where they create different grants and prize pools to incentivize artists to come to the platform. So, I don't know. I bet we could look up in the history of Apple or, the Android store that, there were incentives for app developers to be able to develop on that platform, because it is kind of like a chicken or the egg scenario where, you don't really want creators before, or it's tough for a creator to come to the platform before the users are there, and vice versa. You don't want to have users without a strong creator community. So yeah, I think you could see where, an Atari brand, I don't know, Dick's Sporting Goods came to the Sandbox, and they didn't have anybody within their company that was a 3D, artist. And so you could see agencies or different, groups being hired by these companies to create branded, assets for their stores.
Cool.
Yeah. And so a couple other like small mechanics that they have within their platform, they have gems and catalysts. So they're both, I believe, ERC 20 tokens. Gems are burned to give attributes to your assets. So this is considered an asset. And then, you burn certain gems to add, different rarity to these assets. And then the catalyst is another ERC 20 token that is required to link your gems that you've burnt to the asset tokens. So I think I don't know, from my understanding, it gets a little complex when you're trying to add rarity and functionality to these different assets. And so that's something that they could kind of clean up in the future. But yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty awesome platform. And I think we've all had it on our radars, but you know, they've got the alpha out now. And one other note between the Sandbox and Decentraland is that Sandbox has essentially or the majority of their nodes and servers operated by the company, where Decentraland, I believe, has the majority in the community's hands. And so, like you were talking about, Armand, on the last episode, you know, you've got speed and trust built because these companies are, the Sandbox is housing these nodes, but at the same time, it's not a decentralized network. And because of that, they can, you know, have influence within the network. So yeah, I think that covers it.
That's an interesting piece to distinguish the two. I'm actually excited to go through, because you're going to do Decentraland next, right?
Yeah, next episode.
I'm excited to go through that and kind of see what what the key differences are.
Yeah.
Just because I think I'm just starting to kind of get a grip on what all this looks like. And so, you know, just knowing some of the different platforms and what they're doing differently would be super helpful to kind of better understand the space as a whole, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it'll get even more interesting when we go into NFT worlds after Decentraland, because, you know, instead of having the one large map approach, they've got 10,000 unique spaces that you can go to. So I think it would be interesting. I could probably put together almost like a pros and cons or different, you know, list of different attributes to distinguish between these different metaverses.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, I feel like it's just going to be ever changing. Like, I feel like it's going to be changing like quarter to quarter in terms of what the companies are putting out. And like, I think this year there's a lot of expectations on Sandbox. Like last year was kind of the year of, you know, speculation, anticipation. This year it's like, you know, people want to see, you know, some sort of delivery in terms of like in-game experiences and or in metaverse experiences and like actual adoption of it. So I think they're kind of coming to like a beachhead in terms of like they got to go one way or another at the end of this year and kind of, you know, figure out if they're going to be a metaverse to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to give you a quick shout out to Coin Bureau. I definitely watched a few videos on Coin Bureau through the Sandbox. So
yeah, guy is the man.
Yeah,
guy is the guy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Evs, that was super helpful. Thanks for doing a deep dive there. I think with the remaining time, Garcia, I mean, very topical subject right now. Obviously, Ape Coin was just released and everyone's been talking about it. I know you've kind of been following it a decent amount. Can you give us a little bit of an update on what's going on there? I mean, I know barely anything about it. Obviously, we've all heard of Bored Ape Yacht Club and them just basically transcending reality. I mean, it's like 300 grand for one Bored Ape. Apparently the airdrop was crazy. What are you seeing on that side of things?
Yeah, so I mean, but basically, like for people who don't know, like on March 17th, basically, Bored Ape Yacht Club started rolling out their primary token. So it's called Ape Coin, and essentially they're picturing it to be used as like an ecosystem fund. So I can pull up what that actually looks like here. But they have the distributions right here on what it's actually going to be used for. So it's 1 billion tokens in total. 150 million are ones that are just immediately claimable for any Bored Ape Yacht Club or Mutant Ape Yacht Club holders. And then 470 million are going to a DAO treasury for resources for the community. So things like, you know, putting like big concerts, you know, on in New York City for Bored Ape Yacht Club members, like things like that. Like that's, you know, that's something they did last year as an example. But that would be used for things like that. and they're also going to have some for like the company, some charity, and then obviously people who are involved in it as well. But so like in terms of like that drop for the 150 million, each Bored Ape got 10,100 tokens. So that's like 115 grand right now at the token price or something. Wait, at the highest, it was like 170 grand back here. So, you know, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of people were talking about how it's a somewhat of a liquidity injection because it's so much money going to a group of people who are a lot of them are going to reinvest it into things. So we saw it a little bit with NFTs, like in terms of a couple projects like Doodles, Suzuki, NFT Worlds even got a little bump after that. So we're seeing it in some of the bigger projects, but you know, it hasn't been like anything overwhelming in terms of the amount of liquidity that's been introduced by it.
Well, so can you pull up the charts for those other projects that launched coins? Because off the top of my head, what always impressed me about Bored Ape Yacht Club is like the willingness for the community to just diamond hand.
Yeah.
You know, like so many projects. I mean, you get a huge payout like this, and you would expect the price to take a pretty big hit. And that hasn't happened yet on Ape Coin. So I'm curious on the other projects in terms of like comps to look at. How is do you know like some of the other tokens? Like, can you pull up the chart? Because I would expect after, I mean, the airdrop for NFT Worlds, for example, like you had called it a while back. You knew that the price was gonna, you know, after that was gonna dip because people are gonna obviously take some profits. That doesn't seem to have happened with Ape Coin, really. It might happen over like a longer time frame. I know, you know, I think we all expected a pretty drastic drop when NFT Worlds had their you know, airdrop. And it seemed to take like actually longer than I thought, but it did in fact happen, just like you said, right? Like there was a pretty big dip, but it happened over maybe like 2-3 weeks, maybe even a month, where the price went down, and now it's starting to pick back up. How is Ape Coin comparing to some of these others?
Yeah, so it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, but it's definitely a good, like a valid comparison. But why I would say it's apples to oranges is because with Bored Ape Yacht Club, you're talking about a project that people want to like buy the token regardless. Like people want to, you know, invest in it, like they believe in the future of it, so they're going to snag, you know, some Ape Coin. The other thing to note is that in these other projects, a lot of the times, like 80 to 90% of the supply is that action. Like it's people who got the tokens for free or got airdrop the tokens, like, or like with a Woo or like with Honey D from Bears Deluxe, like people are just accruing it for free. So there's no downside to just liquidating it, even if it's a small amount of money. But with this, you know, they have about like half the total supply out there. And a lot of these guys have already sold, but like the total supply is 277.5 million. So like they, even if all those people held, which they haven't, so a lot of that circulating supply is probably not in their hands anymore. There's a lot more in terms of like distributing the amount of tokens that are between different types of holders, as opposed to like just being the people that got it for free. So the downside risk was a lot less with this coin because of that. And because it instantly shot to like a 3 billion market cap, which is, I mean, it's already coin 45. Like it's already ahead of, no, it's not ahead of Sandbox. It's like right next to Sandbox, but
no, it's right above Axie Infinity though.
Okay.
So pretty significant.
Yeah, and almost that Phantom.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a company that is valued more than like SaaS companies, you know, like they're valued at more than $5 billion now. So it's like, this is like their IPO essentially, you know? So this is, you're talking about like a next level type of funding and like money involved. So like, I think the rules do apply, but with the small amount of percentage of people that actually had that circulating supply that got it for free, I think that kind of contributes to it too.
Well, another note with the Bored Ape Yacht Club too is that you guys there? Sorry.
Yeah, we're
Sorry, my Zoom just cut out. I was like, oh, did we run out of time there?
You're good.
They acquired CryptoPunks and Me Bits.
Yeah, me bits. Yeah.
Yeah, in the past couple weeks. And so, I mean, I'm sure they had enough cash to be able to make that acquisition without the ICO, but this certainly replenishes a lot of the stuff that they used on those acquisitions. And you figure, this type of money that they put in that treasury or DAO that they have could go towards anything. I don't know, but I'm sure there will be some very interesting collaborations coming out of those acquisitions.
Yeah, that's definitely something to watch. Like Yuga Labs, so that's the parent company now of Bored Ape Yacht Club, Meebits, and CryptoPunks, which are arguably the three most like well known, or at least three earliest.
Right.
Arguably, and so like now they have a lot to play with. Like they can do, like in terms of like their runway to be acquired by another company, like a Disney or like something else. Like I don't know what they're going to put together, but they have all these IP rights of all these popular NFTs, and now they can kind of go to work and building out, experiences or building out, whatever else they want to do. So,
yep.
Super interesting. And then you had also mentioned, I think that you said something about them also releasing some sort of land or something. Is that on their roadmap?
Yeah, so they're gonna be I haven't looked at the roadmap in a long time, but they're gonna be launching, I think it's almost like 200,000 parcels of land, so it's like a little bit bigger than Sandbox. And like people are kind of like on the fence. They kind of don't, I would say like they don't necessarily understand what the value prop is going to be, other than obviously you're flexing the Bored Ape Yacht Club brand. But at the same time, like I think it's hard to see how it's going to compete with a lot of these other metaverses, unless it's just, if people really love this brand that much, they want to hang out in these land parcels. But I'm not seeing it on their like roadmap. That's at least I'm sure if we went into their Discord that they'd probably have an updated one, but
interesting.
I don't see one here.
Yeah, I mean that's an enormous piece of land, 200,000, different parcels. So
yeah, and like their whole thing is they want to make it like you can only buy it with Ape, and then everything in there is Ape Coin, and like so they're trying to like make up their own ecosystem essentially.
Yeah, and that's how Sand and Mana in the Decentraland coin is set up. When you look at the plots of land that they have, they like you're only allowed to buy it in Sand. So I think that's pretty common. But I guess we'll have to do a little bit of a deep dive into Yuga Labs as well. I'm sure they've got some other projects out there that we could kind of see, I guess, the development chops and like experience that they bring to the table.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, I think that will do it for episode 4. So, as always, to the listeners, thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. Same time, same place next week. We'll be back. If you found this useful, please like, comment, and subscribe below. But apart from that, till next time, signing off. Wagme.
Adios.